Hi, and welcome to another episode of Achieving Minerva. I'm your host, Sal, and this is going to be an episode on the mental space of retirement and how we can achieve mental freedom in conjunction with financial freedom. If you like what you've been listening to so far, go ahead and subscribe and tell your friends about us. We also have a blog on our website at achievingminerva.com. We're also on Twitter at MinervaFire. A little bit about the title of the show. So, Achieving Minerva is a kind of a nod to achieving nirvana. Nirvana is the ultimate goal of the Buddha in Buddhist culture. Nirvana is this state of self-actualization, this state of where you've achieved absolute inner peace with yourself, and so now you are able to meet the divine. If there are any Buddhists out there, and I've butchered exactly what nirvana is, please let me know. I apologize. That is my best understanding based on my reading. Anyway, so Achieving Minerva is kind of a nod to that. Minerva was the Roman goddess of wisdom. She is the Roman counterpart to Athena in the Greek pantheon of gods. She's often associated with the owl, and we see owls depicted with wisdom all throughout kind of history and pop culture as well. You also notice that's why our logo is the face of an owl, or at least the outline of an owl's face. The story of Minerva, the Roman mythology story of Minerva, goes a little bit like this. So Minerva is the daughter of Metis and Jupiter. Jupiter is basically the Zeus equivalent. Zeus was Greek, Jupiter's Roman. We're in Rome. Jupiter raped Metis, who got pregnant as a result of that rape. Metis was a shapeshifter, and she became a fly and convinced Jupiter to eat her whole. And so now Metis, as a fly, is inside Jupiter, hanging out. She decided to forge weapons and armor within the body of Jupiter. And then she gave birth to Minerva, still inside Jupiter's body. Minerva put on these weapons and this armor and shapeshifted back into a human and exploded out of Jupiter's head. So Minerva was born out of Jupiter's head. She was then deemed the goddess of wisdom. Her other jurisdictions were justice and the law and the keeper of the laws, and basically kind of the Supreme Court of Rome is basically what she was in charge of. Now, wisdom has always kind of intrigued me, just as a concept. The story of King Solomon also kind of intrigues me as part of that. So King Solomon, if you go back to the Old Testament, Solomon was a new king, and he was granted this classic genie deal by God, God said, Solomon, ask for whatever it is you want, and I'm going to give it to you. And Solomon said, I would like, and I'm quoting here, somewhere in 1 Kings, a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. God was pretty stoked that Solomon didn't just ask for a bunch of gold, a bunch of money, a bunch of women, and all that. So God says, that's pretty cool. I'm going to give you this wisdom that you've asked for, and also all the riches you could ask for, all the women you could ask for, all of the property you could ask for, all the power, it's all yours, and also this wisdom on how to use that power. So that's a pretty cool story. And to date, a lot of historians still point to Solomon as the richest man to have ever lived. He reportedly had just hundreds of wives and concubines. His temple and his palace were just magnificent at the time. Solomon is kind of the man. And as far as wisdom goes, most of the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament is written by Solomon. Now, I'm not really a religious person myself, but I really like that story a lot. If you guys are fans of Game of Thrones, maybe you're not fans of the show if you're like me, but I read the books as well. I love fantasy. There's a quote where Maester Aemon is talking to Jon Snow, who is recently been elected the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. And Jon Snow's very young. And Maester Aemon is like 100 years old. He's lived for a long time, and he says to Jon, "Knowledge is a weapon, and make sure you are armed well before you go to battle." And I like this idea of knowledge being the weapon, and wisdom to me would then be the skill on how to use the weapon. If you handed me a sword right now, yeah, I'd have a weapon, but I wouldn't know how to use it. It takes a little bit of training and skill to know how to use that effectively. Now, wisdom kind of gives us this freedom to live our best life. Okay, so financially, we need to be free in order to facilitate our best life, but we need to actually understand what is our best life, and that's going to be different for everybody. The first big point that I want to talk about is that comparison is the thief of joy. If you go to the Reddit for financial independence or personal finance or any of these money-focused subreddits, you're going to find these two stories over and over and over. You're going to find, I achieved financial independence when I was 25 years old. Here's how I did it. There are no, and the title's going to say there's no loopholes, and in the explanation, there's going to be just rife with loopholes. I was given all this money from my parents and my grandparents. I won the lottery, yada, yada, yada. All these loopholes. You're also going to find the polar opposite, okay? You're going to find these, most likely in the personal finance, you're going to find these stories that say, I have nothing to my name. How do I get better? And then you're going to find all of the classic advice. Get yourself a savings account, get an emergency fund before you even worry about investing. But if you go there, if you're just the average Joe, you're not one of these polar opposites. You're thinking, wow, how did these people get $1 million before they were 30? Or you're going to say, wow, I am way better than this person who's 45 and doesn't have their financial shit together. That is a terrible place to go, okay? Comparison is the thief of joy. Keeping up with the Joneses does not give you any sort of satisfaction other than something on the surface, superficial. FIRE needs to be an individual journey or a family journey where you worry about you, your bank account, your portfolio, and nothing else. Don't worry about the kid who went to law school and law school was paid for and now he's making $700,000. Don't worry about the kid who went to Silicon Valley, had a really good idea, and now they're millionaires. Those are few and far between. Comparison is not really a good place to be. But it is worth noting that, if you are this person that's 30, 40, and just starting this financial independence journey, it is possible to achieve financial independence in 10 years or less. A lot of those jobs that help you do that are in the tech sector, engineering sector, so it may require going back to school and investing in one of those STEM degrees. But don't look at it like if you're 40 or 50 saying, I'm never going to get to retire. That's not true. There are people that start when they're 20, end when they're 30, and it does happen. But don't think that all is lost for you, okay? So that's kind of how you can get yourself way depressed, way down in the dumps. And it takes a little bit of self-security and confidence to achieve this sort of wisdom, or to achieve this sort of freedom, I should say. So achieving Minerva is not necessarily achieving wisdom. I don't consider myself wise. I don't consider myself some guru or anything. But it's not really achieving this sense of wisdom. It's achieving freedom. And it's achieving a different type of freedom than financial, but financial is part of it. Okay? So I have it defined that when I achieve my financial independence number, which for me is $2 million, I hope to also have achieved a mental space where I can not work and be happy and content with the life that I've built at that point. Adequate spare time, that I have built adequate hobbies, I have made kids that are self-sufficient, that I have a wife that is happy to have me home, things like that. Those are all outside of having $2 million in the bank. That's kind of where I've drawn the line. Minerva, hopefully, is $2 million plus a life that I like a lot. So it takes a lot of time to get that. There are these people that go into the FIRE mindset, and they hate work. They want to build as much money as possible. If you go to any of these other financial independence blogs, Mr. Money Mustache, Money with Katie, Quit Like a Millionaire, Financial Samurai, a lot of them are only focused on the money, and for good reason. There's a lot of math involved with becoming financially independent. But people like that work their fingers to the bone all day, every day, when they get to be 30 or 35 and all of a sudden they stop working, they find very quickly that they actually like working. They just didn't like working there or working like that, or they wanted the freedom to not have to have a job that paid $500 million. I have found that I'm not like that. I like not working. I like having days off to do whatever the hell it is I want to do. If I want to go run errands, if I want to do hobbies, which my hobbies are mostly at home, they take time. So they look at everything in a purely mathematical, financially point of view, or at least that's what they publish on their content. And that's fair because that helps people have a guide of what to do. But in order to achieve true Minerva, true freedom, mental freedom, we need to be able to understand not working does not fit everybody's personality, does not fit everybody's ideal life. If you like working, have at it, but find the job that you want to do for a long time. If you hate being in the tech sector, then there's absolutely something to just biting the bullet for a couple years, raking in that big income, and then going and doing whatever it is you want to do if it's a lower income. If you want to go pet the dolphins, then you need to either account for the lower salary that entails, or go volunteer and take no salary. One thing that kind of I want to help you guys is our society, Western society. It's not just America, it's Europe as well. All of the Western civilization. Think about how entwined work is with your identity. When you meet somebody new, what is one of the first questions that you ask that person? I'll tell you what it is. It's probably, what do you do for a living? What does your wife do for a living? You're trying to get to know somebody. That's one of the top 5 questions that you probably ask. What do you do for a living? And everybody says, I am a doctor. I am a nurse. I am a blah, blah, blah. My name is Sal. I'm a whatever it is you do for a living. That is not necessarily a good thing because you can't work till you're 80. And even if you can, why do you want to? My grandmother worked as a lunchroom lady until she was about 75 years old. She liked going there. She loved those kids, but she was doing that out of necessity. She was not very well off. But she had to get out of the house and drive to work every day. And honestly, she should not have been driving for a long time. But a lot of people, they treat work as if it's part of their identity. Almost to the same extent that sports fans think that their sports team is part of their identity. I'm a Braves fan, and the Braves are in a battle for the division right now with the Mets. But it's always so interesting. I always say, "Oh, we won." Braves don't care that I cheer for them. They're happy to have fans, of course, but I'm not part of that team. I didn't do anything. Work is kind of the same thing. Work is not your family. No matter how much Michael Scott wants you to believe that work is where your family is, that's not true. The company will always go for whatever the bottom line is. If you stop producing, you will be out the door as fast as possible. If you are producing, they're going to try to keep you producing for as cheap as possible. That's just how it is. You need to find a good identity for yourself outside of work. When I come home, I'm ready to do everything there is at home to do. I play with my kid. I keep bees. I brew beer. I make soap. I do a bunch of these kind of homesteading kind of hobbies because that's what I like to do. That's what I like to do with my time, and it helps me have an idea of when I'm not having to go to work every third day, this is what I'm going to do with my life. This whole Achieving Minerva is really trying to find what is going to make you the most mentally free. Financial independence is part of that. You have to have the finances to facilitate it. After all, it turns out freedom is not free. But like for me, I haven't achieved the $2 million yet. But I'm at a very stable job. I get paid enough that I'm going to get that eventually. I'm not in this hurry to rush in 10 years because I like my job and I'm paid adequately enough that I don't need to hurry up and then get out of here. I'm very comfortable with where I am, and that's a very important place to be before you get to work optional and decide to pull the trigger to stop working. That was a lot about the mental space and Minerva and kind of the essence of this podcast and my life's mission and how to use this podcast and as well my blog. I do have a blog at achievingminerva.com. I don't always talk about the same topics in the podcast as I do the blog, but there's usually a lot of crossover. I also am on Twitter at Minerva Fire. Please feel free to engage. Hit subscribe, tell your friends about this, and I hope to see you next time on Achieving Minerva.